tonight's show a little bit ahead of time. We got a couple of different topics we wanted to discuss. No special guest this evening. It's just me and my good old friend and co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, that's right here with you guys tonight. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Rico?
We hanging in there. I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. I think it's a timely discussion. I think it'll be a little bit refreshing. Unfortunately, we're not go- we're recording the show, so we won't have much interaction as far as feedback from the audience per se. But we're going to post the article so that everyone will know what we're talking about. There's an article from Time Magazine. Let me jump back over here and read the title of the article. It's called "The Trucking Bubble Has Burst." And the article was published back on September the 13th. It's a really informative article. Good friend of the show is kind of quoted all throughout the article. Mr. Dean Croak from DAT. He's is given a lot of information inside of the article. Um, a lot of stuff that we've talked about, and we want to try to connect a couple of dots with this article, and we wanted to kind of discuss a little bit about negotiating as well, because one of the biggest things that I've been looking at and hearing from a lot of people that are from looking at social media and stuff like that, everyone's complaining about the rates. Everyone's complaining about their not being able to make a sufficient amount of money to properly run their business, run their trucking company, and whenever I hear those type of complaints and everything, I naturally want to see people succeed, and I want to be able to maybe help people navigate whatever it is that may be impeding them from being able to be successful, and understand running a business is tough, and we don't necessarily as entrepreneurs, and especially in our industry, sometimes people are so tight-fisted with information, and that's one thing that we try to do here on the shows. We try to share as much good information, real life information as we possibly can, to hopefully help you get on down the road and keep the doors open and keep your business successful. Um, and with that being said, Chuck, man, we got a bunch of different places that we can start from. But I guess if we go back to the article really quickly, and the discussion that we was talking about before we came on air, um, ever since I've gotten into the industry, there's been this, as far as what I feel, um, a trucking shortage, a driver shortage, so to speak. And I think most of the people that are looking at it from a perspective similar to mine is, if there's always been such a, and I've been in the industry for damn near 20 years, um, if it's been a shortage for that long period of time, why is it that so many people are having a hard go on negotiating or getting better rates when it comes
Okay,
to
so
trying to get good rates?
all right, so there's two sides to this. Number one, we have a shortage of truck drivers within North America, and that article does not. And the one thing I will say is the article is well written, except that's one of the parts it's not, because it doesn't make the distinction between um, owner operators and
Company.
drivers. Okay, we have too many owner operators and not enough drivers, not enough company drivers in general. Um, a lot of people got in, like company drivers, left their good paying jobs during the pandemic, went out, paid overinflated prices for trucks, and jumped on the bandwagon. And as everybody knows, Enrico, you and I have been screaming from the rooftop for years, for the last couple of years, beware of all the crap that you're reading on social media about how to get rich quick, buy a truck. Um, when I met you down in Atlanta a couple of months ago, and I was volunteering for Next Gen Truckers at a teachers conference, a lady came up to me who was a teacher. Okay, this was a teacher, and she said, "Well, I'm not interested in driving a truck, but I want to buy a truck, and I'm going to put a driver on it." And I looked at her and I said, "Have you been in the truck industry before?" She says, "No, but I know I can make a lot of money doing this." And, and I go, no, 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 you can't. You give me 2 minutes. I'm going to save you a lot of heartbreak. And I did, I gave her my time, and she walked away, and she thanked me profusely. And there was all that bullshit, pardon my language, on the air, but that's what it was. It was nonsense. Get rich quick, be a load broker, get rich quick, go buy a truck, put a driver in it. It's not that easy. Okay. We have too many owner operators, because as the article, said, we went from something like 250,000 to 490,000 licensed motor carriers. Now, my understanding, that's DATS numbers, but my understanding from, I think it was our friend Hank Seaton, is that there were a lot more motor carriers, and altogether there were closer to around 700,000 licensed motor carriers in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. And so we went from like 250 to 700,000. Well, of course, all those people were they were playing, I shouldn't say all, but an awful lot of the new entrants, and even some of the ones that had been in there before, were playing that spot market. And what the spot market is, it's nothing more than an avenue for excess freight. So any freight that doesn't fit into contract, because there's not enough capacity in the contract side of things, ends up on the spot. Well, when you have enough capacity, the spot market dies. Right. And what reminds me of, and I've lived this one before, what this always reminds me of is it happens up in Canada what happens is in the spring sometimes there's a bunch of people standing at a riverbank trout fishing, and there's one lonely trout swimming up the river, and everybody else fish, and everybody's doing whatever they can to grab that fish. And that's what this reminds me of. Everybody is standing by the riverbank with their net. They don't have a fishing pole. They've got a net, and somebody else fish, which is load, and everybody dips their net in. You got 50 people, and there's one load. And that's what's going on now. So, of course, it drives the price down.
That's where you get into that. Yeah, you get into that position where you're a race to the bottom.
Right. I was talking to a carrier friend of mine today. And this is a guy that knows, he knows the carrier side of the business. And he said, well, the brokers are driving the price down. And I said, Glenn, the brokers don't drive the price down. I said, the market drives the price down. I said, things are, and I want our listeners to understand this, and I'm retired. I'm not I'm not active in that side of the business anymore, but everything is very transparent. You can't be charging the customer $4 a mile when the market is paying $1.79 for a truck, because customers have access to data at their fingertips. And any customer worth his weight in mud will go to that. He'll find out what the current rates are, and he's not going to give his mile when he knows that the carrier is getting $1.79. It ain't happening. So it is the carriers themselves that go, well, I'll do it. Listen, I've got to get back from, I really need to get back from New York to Texas. So I'll take that load right now. I'll take it for $1.80. And some other guy says, well, I'll do it for $1.75. And that's what's going on. And bottom wins. That's the spot market.
Right. So in the article, they talked about how one of the things that it was a mirage that took place, meaning that there were some companies that were so worried about shortages that they ordered more goods than they needed, creating temporary jobs for drivers and bringing those goods to them. So a lot of times, yes, that boom of ordering much more things than they might have needed and warehousing it was another way of kind of like inflating the bubble even more during the pandemic, and compounded with the whole supply chain stuff coming in off of ports and
100%. And I'll add on top, and this is something the article failed to mention, which they should have. What happened an awful lot now, as a rule, in the full truckload market, you've got, depends what the product is, but you'll have, if it's a light product, you may have 26 or 28 pallets. It depends how they're loaded. And if it's a heavier product, you may only have 18, and the pallets weigh 25 or 2,200 pounds or whatever. And, so you can be legal. What was going on during the pandemic all over the place was companies were making, and I'm going to use tires as an example, okay, just as an example here. Companies would produce some tires for ATVs, let's say. Now, normally they would ship, a truckload, but they didn't have the raw material to make that many, so they would only ship people a quarter load at a time. But the people were so desperate to get that quarter load that rather than send it with LTL, they were chartering a whole truck. So now all of a sudden you're using a 53-foot trailer for a quarter of a truck, which was going on all over the place. And they weren't even giving the carriers the opportunity to co-load it with other partial freight. They were saying, listen, you know what? It's in New York now, and I need it in California in 3 days. Get a team on it. I need that stuff. Can't get me a team? Well, okay, I'll take 4 days. Okay, but get it here. There was no time. Okay,
Right.
They sealed it. They put a geofence on it. They monitored it to make sure that damn thing, because they had customers waiting. You had customers with ATVs, golf equipment, whatever it was, to groom golf courses, whatever it was. Their equipment was down. They had no time to wait for their inventory, and that went on all over the place.
And so, one of the things that we definitely want to make sure we're talking about involved in this discussion as well, not necessarily a piece of the trucking bubble bursting or negotiating per se, but understanding your costs. Going back to the rudimentary part of any business, trying to keep your cost as low as you possibly can. And in order to do that, you have to measure everything. So are you producing weekly, monthly, daily profit and loss statements, so that
you know what?
Understand.
Really, you're 100% right. Daily, you actually have to do a daily statement so you know where you stand. Because if you find out that you're losing money the first day, well, then you're not going to lose money for the whole week. You can change something, okay? And if your business model isn't working, maybe your truck's using too much fuel. Maybe that old herring's got to go, because it reaches a point, as anybody can tell you, sometimes when you keep a piece of equipment too long, the repair costs, the operating costs just go through the roof. The big carriers, even the Penske's and the Riders and the Pack Lease, they all found that out, because their business model, any of them, they keep a truck for about 600,000 or 700,000 miles, and they get rid of it before there's any serious breakdown. Well, during the pandemic, they were forced to keep trucks much longer, putting 1 million miles on them, and things broke down, but they couldn't replace those trucks.
So one of the key things that we talked about, and we've had them on the show, because one of the biggest costs you just alluded to it, fuel. NASTC, National Association of Small Trucking Companies. If you're not familiar with them, go Google them. Get involved with NASTC. They have an excellent fuel program. Right now, fuel being such a high driver portion of your business, probably the most expensive piece of the business right now is your fuel costs. You have to be getting a decent discount rate on your fuel, and if you're not a part of a big fleet or something like that, and I understand that some I know a lot of factoring companies and everybody else are out there pitching. Everybody seems to have a fuel program now. I get calls all the time about
Yeah.
getting involved on their fuel program. And if you have to go that route, something by all means, something is better than nothing. But if you can get involved with NASTIC, you're going to save substantially. Whenever those people call me, I just tell them I'm telling them I'm already with NASTIC. They already know we can't even compete with the discount that you're getting through them. So we're not even going to waste the time on trying to pitch it to you. The only
Yeah.
thing that sometimes they'll try to pitch and say, well, you can get a line of credit here at Love's or whatever the particular brand or whatever it may be. But I got credit cards and everything for that, so I don't necessarily need the.
Yeah, Rico, there's you know what? There's a bear trap there, right there. Be very careful. A lot of times with trucking, what I find is there are things available that are convenient, but they're very expensive, and you damn well can't afford them. There's not enough money in this game. Contrary to what you see on those Instagram ads and everything else, I can tell you, having operated trucks for almost 50 years, the numbers are skinny in real life, as you know.
Well, I'll
And
tell you, I recently had to go. Do I have the invoice right here on my desk? I think I might have those invoices right here in front of me. I recently had to go put my truck in the body shop, because somebody backed into my truck.
right,
And I'm looking for the invoices. I thought I had them over here, but here they are. from Ryder, 7-day rental. Check this out. These are real numbers. I'm going to share real numbers with you guys. Starting odometer. This was for 1 week. Starting odometer was 76,312. Ending odometer was 78,867. So that's a 25.50. And they're charging 18. They charged 18 cents per mile. So my mileage charge alone on that was $459.90 for 1 week. The 1 week rental, with taxes and everything, came out to be $2,060.75 for 1 week.
and you know what? That's what the real cost is to run a new truck. And running an old truck, you don't know, because you got to be real careful. And you got to be lucky.
So I'm trying to make sure I don't have all my account information on here. But if you can see, it's not flipped around. $2,600 for 1 week.
Yep.
And I have 3 similar invoices like that. So it's almost $8,000 worth of invoices just for not even 30 days.
Yep.
$8,000 just to rent a truck while my truck was in the shop getting repaired.
That's it.
And that's a hell of a lot more expensive than my truck. I mean, but at the same time, like you were saying, that's the real cost of running the truck. So what someone should or could do is maybe mimic those numbers and plug those into their own operation. That way they have some type of way of a goal to shoot for, to be setting money aside. If you want to try to start setting some money aside and you're talking about replacing some equipment, that might be a good template. But the best template would probably be to take some time and go back through and actually run your numbers and see what your numbers are, so that, and that's going to be the key. Because when we talk about negotiating, you got to understand what it is that you need to make in order for you to stay profitable, in order for you to be profitable. Understanding your operating costs, your fixed costs, and your variable costs. Understanding what those things do from a day-to-day basis, so that you can actually make informed decisions on how to negotiate for your truck. And understand that cost is a real thing on a daily thing. So if you're trying to negotiate and you're saying, well, I'm not getting the rates that I need in this particular market, because say if you got yourself into a bad market, and well, I'm going to sit today. Well, if you sit today, you got carrying costs for that day. So even if you set that day, now you got more ground to make up. If you're trying to wait till tomorrow, you got
Yeah.
more ground to make up because you sought that day. Sometimes it's better to maybe take that L for one day versus having those L's stack up, and now you got a 2 or 3 days worth of L's that you're trying to recuperate from.
Yeah, and the best line I ever heard about truckers was from a guy who ran a trucking business up in North Bay, Ontario, and he once said, "Truckers are famous for solving problems by creating new ones." And that was the most profound thing I'd ever heard, because it's true. We are as a group, and I can paint the whole group of us. That's how we operate, and it's not a good thing. And especially when numbers are tight. What we saw during that pandemic was probably, I'm not going to say once in a lifetime, because we saw that 2017, 2018 boom, which we talked about for years, but we hadn't had a boom like that for years. I remember my son coming into my office during 2007. He says, "Pap, have you ever seen anything like this?" And I said, "No, but it won't last long." It never does.
Give it some time.
And the last one lasted a hell of a lot longer than we thought it would.
Right. Right.
This is what you see right now this is the real world. This is you. If you can make it in this time, okay, you're going to be fine. Now is the time. Like, I would much rather see somebody get into it now than get into it back in March or April of 2020, because this is the fuel is the real cost. Repairs and parts, that's the real cost. Okay. Freight, that's the real remuneration. That's what freight pays. You've got to be able to split hairs at the end of the day and figure out how you're going to take in $1.79 a mile and have expenses at $1.89 a mile and make money by losing 10 cents. How are you going to do it? You've got maintenance on that truck. You got tolls, you got IFTA, you got all these other things. And that's
one of the biggest things is that, when it comes to dispatching, and we're not even going to go into the whole dispatch service thing or whatever like that. If I'll say this, I have personally have not had conversations with anybody that uses a dispatch service that has had any success using a dispatch service.
Well, Rico, I will say, no, I have met people, but their business is very different. And what they do is they do partial loads, and they use the dispatch service for that. And that makes a lot of sense. They're driving from New York to Denver, Colorado, and they've got, they're picking up and dropping off, and they've got people watching the load boards while they're driving, and somebody calls them and says, "Listen, I've got 5 skids in Kearney, Nebraska. You just dropped off in Omaha this morning, and I got 5 skids in Kearney going to Denver, and there's $900 in it." Well, you know what? Those work, okay? And if you have to give the dispatch service $100 for that, great. That's worth it. But if you're a full load carrier, no way. I don't see what you need them for.
Right. And that's I think that's probably the exception to the rule, and understanding
the only one, Rico. If you
running LTL.
Yeah. We're talking about things like with costs. There's a cost to use a dispatch service. They're not doing it for free. There's a cost to using some of these services, these lines of credit you get from these credit cards and stuff like that you get from the fuel companies, where I know for a fact the men and women out there that belong to NASDAQ buy fuel a whole lot cheaper.
Absolutely.
I don't believe you get any terms, but nonetheless,
the term is they give you, so NASDAQ sets you up. They give you a credit. At least this is my situation, And
Okay.
I believe it's pretty much like that for everybody. They'll give you initially the based upon how many trucks you got. They'll give you a couple of grand for per truck that you got. So if you got one truck, they'll give you like $22,000, $2,500 maybe
Right.
for a line of credit.
Yep.
That's due and payable every week on Friday.
Yep.
So so they're not going to let you get too far out there, and which is a good thing.
No, they're smart guys, and they, you know what, they've got a very successful business, and it's those sort of things where you can save a ton of money.
Right.
If you can make deals with your customers, whether they're load brokers or direct customers, so you don't have to use a factoring company, there's more money. Okay.
Right.
You know, if you know, like what you do with tires, where you go and you get a deal on tires and you buy a few more than you need because you get them cheaper, good used tires or whatever. Or there's somebody's got an end of line special. That's where it's not what you make, it's what you save.
What you can keep.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hard part, Rico. You know, my first year of running a small fleet of trucks, and this goes back like, my God, 45 years ago, almost 45 years ago. I did $1 million that year, over $1 million. That was back then, which by today's standards, but you know, let's see, you could buy a brand new international tractor at that point for about under $40,000. Okay, so you know, actually it can work at 42, or Canadian, or with a Detroit engine. That's what they had come up with that year. But anyway, because we had looked at them, and I did that with rental trucks. But we turned over $1 million, but I didn't keep any because I made a lot of mistakes.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It was the mistakes and I learned really quickly that I need to stop making these mistakes, and we just fix things and didn't do the stupid stuff, and got, you know, drilled down, and we got better fuel mileage and better pricing on fuel, and did all sorts of things, better usage of equipment, and whatever we could do.
And so one of the things that we talked about earlier too, we talked about trying to how can we help people or show them a way to get out of necessarily competing with running in the spot market so much. One of the things that, because once, like we just talked about, one of the biggest conundrums is once you running in that spot market, you basically in a race to the bottom. So
Yeah.
how can you position yourself, even dealing with brokers, to the point to where you can still make a nice margin, profit margin, to be able to operate your business?
Well, I think the first thing you do is line up where you live, do some homework, and the data is available now on Internet Truck Stop and DAT. You can get all the data, and you've got to do your homework. You've got to do the heavy lifting. Nobody in this business is going to hand you anything other than information. You will get information. Data is readily available. You have to just know where to look. You certainly won't get it by not looking for it. But,
well, I mean, ask questions too. I mean, like,
yeah,
by no means do either myself or Chuck talk to say we are the oracle and we all knowing, all wise.
no, but there's other. You know what? Every time I get into my personal vehicle, Sirius XM, the trucker channel is on, and I'm listening to 146 because I learn things, except I won't listen to it Sunday afternoon because they have sports, and I hate sports. And I don't watch it, I don't listen to it, and I don't play it. But other than that, I'm always listening because I learn stuff.
Right.
It opens doors. And when I talk to owner operators, and I go, well, do you ever listen to satellite radio, to 146? No, satellite radio is expensive. There's information. You're sitting there for 14 hours a day. You're in that truck, or you're in there 24 hours. There's information. That information is cheap at a couple $100 a year for your subscription.
Well, and one of the biggest resources that is out there, I'll plug them. Freight waves.
Great stuff.
You can't. I mean, when it comes to the amount of information that they give out, and that's free. That's something that you can catch it live on LinkedIn, or you can go to YouTube and go download the previous episodes after they're recorded and go back and watch them later. And that's something that's a wealth of knowledge of.
Oh my God, there's one woman on there, Grace Sharkey. She's my hero. I just love the information she brings.
And so to tie it back together with negotiating, and we were talking about earlier, see, a lot of times, I think a good example is everybody knows that Florida is one of the worst places in the world that you can go to for freight, regardless to whether it's flatbed, reefer, or dry van. So most people know that you gotta negotiate hard as hell if you're going to entertain any freight going down to Florida, or if you happen to have some type of a situation where you got freight coming back out of Florida or whatever, and you need to get down there. You're ahead of the game, of course, on that front. But all across the country, you can't put yourself, if you're putting yourself in a bad market, you got to start doing an analysis and try to your best to keep your finger on the pulse of the market that you are actually servicing for your type of equipment, whether that be dry van, whether that be reefer, step deck, or whatever. You got to try to keep a pulse on the market on a daily basis on how that market is performing, so that you can understand that if you're operating in the spot market, your negotiating power. Now, that's one thing. The other piece of that is, like Chuck was just talking about, and like we've always touted on here, getting your dumbbells set up. Set up your markets in which you want to service. Your 2 or 3 markets, if you're going to do a tri-haul, or if you're going to just run dumbbell. Get your market set up so that you service those particular markets, and it's going to take some dedication, some patience. You're probably going to get very frustrated in the beginning, but if you put the work in, do the heavy lifting, and make those sacrifices, it will pay off, because once you develop the relationships in those markets, then that has a way of kind of cocooning you, so to speak, from all of the different ebbs and flows within the marketplace.
100%. But you've got to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to have direct customers on those markets. You can have brokers on both ends. You ain't even got to be dealing with. But if you develop the relationships with the brokers on both ends, and they understand, and you prove yourself to be a reliable partner, transportation partner with them, slowly but surely you'll start to see that the loads that you're pulling, that you say that you can handle, that you're committed to, they won't even make it to the board anymore.
No, they don't want to use
those loads come directly to you.
Exactly. And, we've talked about this before. I can tell you that brokers do not want to post. Okay. What brokers will do, they will post to get pricing quite often. Okay. And a lot of brokers will do that. Other brokers just know their markets and know what they're doing. But there is a lot of wasted time by everybody. Some of these smaller brokers will get an RFQ, have no idea what they're doing, so they
survey the market.
Yeah, they put loads out there. They don't phantom loads out there. Guys call. They don't realize, they're inexperienced. They don't realize, well, that's today's rate from Philadelphia to Kansas City is, because there's a bunch of guys there that they want to go get back. But tomorrow you may not find a truck in that particular market. So you know what? You're better off just you go and you talk to brokers on both sides when you find out where you would like to run, what works for you, and talk to brokers, take some time, go and see them, and start building some relationships. The beauty of the whole thing is, if brokers know that, Rico is in North Carolina Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they will gladly take a load that is supposed to go Thursday and hold it till Friday to give it to Rico, because they know he's going to do a good job.
Right.
Right. They will gladly do that. And you'll see brokers will phone you and say, when are you, listen, I've got one coming out of wherever, can you do it? That's why I scream up and down about people with 1 or 2 trucks being 48 state carriers.
And work on your soft skills. This is something that we all could use to help us out in our day-to-day activities. Working on the soft skills, learning how to make a friend. I know I know sometimes you get on the phone and you're talking with somebody, and you may be dealing with somebody that's initially, they're down and dirty. They just want to talk directly about the business or whatever. But if you have an opportunity to find any type of way to take the conversation, not necessarily take it in another direction. I'm not saying that, but there's a way that sometimes doing the dance of building relationships and being relatable to people. Sometimes you got to be able to have some kind of way of an icebreaker or something else, so that the person relaxes them a little bit. Where they're willing to maybe share a little bit more information with you, maybe endear yourself to them a little bit more, and that way that's another way of setting yourself apart, but also gaining more information, asking good quality questions.
What is it? Speaking of that, Rico, first quality question you want to ask is, what is it that we're hauling today? Okay, that's the first question. Because we had Hank on last week, and we had Tommy Rook on,
right?
And that's a huge problem with knowing what you're hauling. Are you hauling a load of jet engines? Because some of these brokers don't tell the carrier.
Right. Or they're very vague in their description.
Yeah. It comes out of a warehouse. It's a jet engine. It's worth $4 million, and the broker doesn't tell the carrier. And a lot, especially in today's market where there's so much double brokering, you really want to know what is it, because you put it on, you own it.
Right.
That's a hell of a risk that the men and women out there listening to this show and that aren't even listening, that are that are driving up and down the road, that some of them don't realize. You're really, in a lot of ways, you're taking title of the product while it's in your care and control.
Right. Right.
So you want to know what it is and what's the value. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, you got to do that. And like I say, and that's something else that when you ask intelligent questions like that, that's something else that definitely will make the person's antenna go up, because everybody's not asking that question.
No, they're not. And as a broker, when somebody would call and say, "Okay, Chuck, I see you have a load going from New York to Toronto, Ontario. What is it?" Well, when you can't tell them what it is, they should usually say, "Well, I don't know what," especially the shady stuff that goes on in the world today. So you really want to know what it is you're hauling, especially because everybody loads out of warehouses now so frequently, and you certainly want to know the value. Is it, sometimes you'll have people offer you a hazardous load. We've had on our fleet side, we've had a dispatcher take a shipment from a broker, and we go to pick it up, and we find out it's a placarded load. We don't want it. Broker didn't tell us, and shipper was about to load it, and the driver said, "What is this stuff?" And he sees the placards on the freight, and hold on a second, I need to call my office. Get out of there. We're not, we're not loading that stuff. So you really, really want to know, because once it's loaded, it's too late.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
You
Um,
know, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, no, you want to put yourself in a position where you can negotiate out of a position of strength at all times.
And that's what I was getting ready to head in that direction, because negotiation is always a leverage game. What do you got to leverage? Hopefully, and this is what we talked about, making sure that you putting yourself, keeping a pulse of the market that you're in. Because the one thing on the spot market, unfortunately, the one thing that you want to have in your favor is that the load to truck ratio is in your favor, meaning there are a lot more loads than there are trucks, so that way the supply and demand can kick in, and you can get a better rate. However, once again, here's the other little fly in the ointment when we talk about building relationships and stuff like that. Sometimes, but to insulate yourself, sometimes you may not be able to go grab the golden ring, so to speak. You may not be able to get all the way to the top and get as much money as you possibly want as you would if you was working a spot market, so to speak. But the trade-off, at least for my opinion, is my quality of life is a lot better. I'm able to be home on a much more consistent basis. I don't have any small children like I used to or anything like that. But I just don't. I just don't have it in me to run from here to New Mexico. I mean,
Well, Rico, you know what? The point is that the shorter the trip, the more it pays per mile. And and I could never understand this because all of a sudden I always say trucks are stupid because truck doesn't know it's going to California or
right.
Cleveland, and you may get $3 a mile on a short trip and $1.79 a mile on a long one, but your expenses are still
Right.
your running expenses are still the same. As a matter of fact, when you get into areas you don't know, they can go up more
It can be a
because
hell of
things
a
get,
lot more expensive. But
yeah.
yeah, so on the negotiating piece, the only from a leverage standpoint, the only thing that you have in your favor is if you are in a high load to truck ratio. If the loads are a hell of a lot more loads than there are trucks that are available, then of course that's leveraging on your benefit. And you should be able to see. You might not be able to see exact numbers, but if you have a load board, there should be some type of indicator on that load board that kind of gives you some type of indication. If you don't have that, if you don't have access to that and you've got your truck posted, here's a good indicator that'll let you know that loads are in you. There's a lot more loads than there are trucks. If you have your truck posted and your phone is ringing a lot, it's probably a good thing. Probably a good thing for you.
If you punch in, Charlotte to New Mexico, and there is one load and it's been there for 3 days, that there are, there's not a lot of opportunity there.
Right, right. Um, so that's what the thing about developing, but start looking at your load board. Start looking at those brokers that once you determine where the market that you want to run, start looking at your load board and start looking at the brokers that constantly are posting, and look at the loads that they're posting on a consistent basis. Maybe keep a note of that, not just a mental note. Because if your mind, I'll tell you, the older I get, the less I can I can keep in the. I got a big old head, but the less I can keep in that thing. Right? Get something, write it down. All this technology, type it in your notes in your phone. Anything that you can do, but there's a way to kind of keep track of those brokers on a consistent basis on both sides, and just reach out to them. You may not get the load that particular day, but start asking questions and start
Yes.
seeing how consistent. You start asking questions, getting access to information, because that's the other key component to any negotiation is information. The more information that you have, the more apt that you're able to make a proposal, to put something together that may fit within the guidelines where it's acceptable to the people that you're talking to.
A great exercise, Rico, is to, wherever you live, okay, so you go to the nearest, and I'm going to just use, you live in Kansas City, for example.
Mhm.
You draw a radius of 50 miles outside of Kansas City. You see who the brokers are. You phone up the well-known brokers in that area. They don't have to necessarily be big and small, the well-known ones that are well established. And you say, listen, I live in Kansas City, and what do you have out of Kansas City that loads in a dry van, whatever sort of equipment you have, or on a flatbed or a reefer, that's steady, that I can work with you? And but I want something that is steady, that I can build a business on and work with you. What do you have? And you know what? Somebody may say, I've got the East Coast nobody wants. I've got this nobody wants. And then, so I'll just use an example. Somebody said, broker in that area, or few brokers say, listen, we've got a lot of freight going to that Northeast area. Anything from Boston all the way down to Baltimore. We got tons of freight all the time of our meatpacking customers. So your next job is to call some brokers on the East Coast, see what they have coming towards Kansas City. And if you make enough calls, you'll get somewhere. It may be a broker out of or brokers out of that area, out of the East, that have freight going into, let's say, Pittsburgh. And then there may be loads from Pittsburgh going right home. You may have to do it that way. But it happens by making those phone calls. And you know what? For some of our listeners, they may be difficult calls to make to those brokers, but you may have to do that.
That's part of doing the heavy lifting. That's part of doing the work. Sometimes, in order to get something that you never had before, you got to do something that you've never done before.
Yes,
you have to be willing to, and that's a learnable skill set. I understand. Sometimes you could be. I'm introverted myself. Sometimes I'm not the most outgoing person that want to go out and meet people and do all that type of stuff. That's not necessarily my forte. I can. I'm fortunate enough to where I can operate in those type of environments. I'm not just like a hermit or nothing like that. But that's something that's learnable, and that's one of those things. Unfortunately, you got to get over it.
You do, and the only way you get over is by doing it.
Right. Or I don't want to add more expenses. You have to hire somebody.
You know what? You do, but you do, and it doesn't work because there's only there's one truck, and it's not feasible. You have to, if you want business does not come to you, especially in this market. Okay, we're talking to people that want to succeed. Okay, right. If people don't want to succeed, well, then go give the truck back to the finance company and go drive for somebody. But if you really want to succeed, you have to do this. You can't.
That's another thing. I've talked to a couple of people that having a rough go of it. And you said, you made mention about it. The drivers, I don't know what it is that we get caught up in our mind that I want to be able to make as much money as I can possibly make when I don't have I haven't put in the work to make as much money as I can possibly make. You can make a decent living as a company driver now.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
If you get with a decent company that has freight, that takes good care of, that's taking better care. I think that, get with some of the more reputable companies that are out there. I think that you can make a pretty decent living as a company driver right now, just because don't get so hell bent on thinking that, oh, I want to be able to have, I want to be able to make $2,000 a week or so on and so forth. If you're really running your numbers, are you really making $2,000 a week? Are you really clearing $2,000 a week, or that just what it seems to be left over, but you haven't really ran the numbers for the true expenses of your company.
That's right. It's little things like putting money aside for that engine that is going to blow. Okay, putting money aside for tires that are going to wear. You know that 18 cents that you
Here's
talked
the
about?
here's the bigger one, Chuck, because this one kind of hits home for me. Putting enough money aside for taxes.
Yes. Forgot about that. You know, Rico, you know the 18 cents a mile you gave that rental company?
Hmm?
Do you know that's the actual cost?
Oh,
That's what it costs them. How leasing companies make their money is, first of all the big guys, well, you've only got two big guys left in all America, and big guys, you know, the Penske and Ryder. There's nobody
right,
else left. They bought everybody else out. But what happens is they buy literally thousands of trucks. Like they're just like JB Hunt, Schneider, and Werner. You know, they buy thousands of them. And then you also have to remember they buy truckloads of filters, and they extend oil changes. They use synthetic. These guys have costs drilled down, and their business model is so they buy trucks a lot cheaper than Rico or Chuck or any of our listeners can buy a truck because they're buying thousands of them.
mm-hmm.
And and then what they do is they keep that truck for 36 or 48 months. Usually the life cycle is it's 36 months on the highway, and then its last year it'll run regional, and they get rid of it after about 4 years. And whatever they sell it for, in most markets, they'll sell that truck for around $50,000, let's say. That's their profit. That's how rental and leasing companies make money. It's really
Right,
and
right,
remember they got a head start against way above everybody because of the fact they're doing everything so much cheaper. So that 18 cents a mile is far less than what you and I can really do maintain that truck for
right, right.
because they're buying truckloads of tires.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at the time. We getting close. We didn't think we were going to be able to squeeze out a whole hour. We pretty much are right there knocking on the door of it. Um, so we got a couple of different things we want to try to. Like I said, we're kind of on the fence. We're not sure if who we're going to have as a guest next week. I think we got a couple of different prospects on
Yeah.
who we want to try to run down, and we'll let you guys know as soon as we know that's confirmed. But with that being said, Chuck, do you want to say closing out before we get out of here? Is there anything extra that you want to say on the topic before we?
Well, you know what? I beg of our listeners that are struggling to change what you're doing because if you're I think the old expression goes if you keep doing the same thing expecting different results, that's insanity.
Insanity.
And sometimes if you just change what you're doing ever so slightly, great things happen, but you've got to make those changes. I don't think anybody wants to be in any type of business in order to fail. Nobody wants to fail. So in order to be a winner, especially in this market, it takes a lot of work and a lot of discipline. Make those changes. If I can help any of you out there, please reach out. My email is chucksnow280@outlook.com and leave your phone number. I'll gladly help you any way I can, whether it's getting you set up with one of my friends traffics, or it's another issue you need some help with some equipment or whatever. I'd be glad to help anybody, and because I'm always glad to help our listeners. And with that, Rico, I'm gonna let you back in the hole for another week. That was a great show.
Absolutely, and I think that a little bit of housekeeping that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, at the top of the show, but it's always good for us to do. Make sure, please help us out, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't cost you anything. Like, share, and subscribe. If you like the video, you know it kind of helps puts us into a broader algorithm as far as the YouTube algorithm is concerned. Make a comment. Leave us a comment. Leave us some feedback on something, topics that you want us to cover here in the future, things that you would like for us to get a little bit more in depth. You can give us a homework assignment. We'll try our best to go out and get as much information as we possibly can. See if we can find a guest that we can bring on board that can kind of break things down and go into it a little bit more in depth. So by all means, give us some feedback, shoot us a note, let us know some things that you would like to see us do more of, or some things that we can improve. We're not above reproach by any means. And with that being said, we want you guys. The biggest thing that I want to leave everybody on as well is, um, a mindset shift sometimes helps. Try to shift your mindset. Sometimes we get so set in our ways. Open up your mind to the possibility of what could happen if things did go right. Sometimes we have such negative self-talk with ourselves sometimes, and sometimes we're our own worst critics. But I want you to give yourself a different scenario, give yourself a different ending. Change you all of the ability to change everything lies at your own in your hand. You have the ability to change something. If it's going bad, you got the ability to turn it around. You just have to take the time to seek out the information and apply yourself and do the work. If you do that, if you apply yourself consistently over time, things will get better.
Yeah.
You may not be a millionaire overnight, but if you stay consistent at it, things consistency has a way of separating the men from the boys, so to speak.
It does. And being consistent and doing the right things, that it works. Ask anybody that has been successful in business. And my hat's off to the men and women out there. This is the toughest business there is. There's no two doubts about it. I always say that the restaurant business, single restaurant business, farming, and trucking are very similar businesses. They're based on passion, very thin margins. You're as good as your last load. You're as good as your last crop. You're as good as your last meal.
Yep.
It doesn't, one screw up, you're done with anything. So, it's a tough business. So the men and women out there that can do it and prosper, they're the best of the best of the best.
Yep. So we're leaving you on that note, ladies and gentlemen. We want to say God bless you. Stay safe. Stay healthy out there. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. And God willing, we'll talk at you same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip flop.
Appreciate it.
God bless.